Well, game two just came like that. Here we are. Connor Letourneau is in Memphis, Tennessee, where the Mississippi River passes through and creates a border of Tennessee and I believe Arkansas. I don't know exactly the geography off the top of my head, but nonetheless, Connor
Mississippi.
Letourneau is there. It's game two. It's the Warriors and the Grizzlies. What started as a thriller, I'm guessing will continue so. We're going to break all that down. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON. He is the Golden State Warriors beat reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. And you can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. Connor, break things down, man. You're traveling with the team. You are an insider. How is the mood in Memphis the morning of game two? And what are your thoughts on game one and looking ahead, man? Floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't had shoot around yet, so I can't tell you what the mood is at the moment, but I can tell you what the mood was like yesterday. The Warriors understand that they were in some ways very fortunate to escape game one with a victory, and they understand that this is a very motivated Grizzlies team. This is a team that plays incredibly hard, knows how to crash the boards, knows how to force turnovers, all those things. And they are going to do everything in their power to not go down 0-2. If Memphis loses tonight, series, in my opinion, is effectively over. You don't lose
Agreed.
both games at home and have a chance against a very good Warriors team. So I'm sure Memphis is very aware of that. So with that in mind, the Warriors are kind of trying to turn the focus to game two and move past all the Draymond drama, because as you can understand, a lot of the conversation yesterday at practice was about Draymond, the flagrant two not getting reduced. And there's been a lot of, chatter around that. And I think Steve is like, okay, let's that happened, but let's move forward now because there's this thing happening now that's very important. So that's kind of where they're at.
How do you think a call like that affects the Warriors? I mean, as a fan, as someone who's just watching that happen, and I'm done touching the subject. All right, I dedicated enough time to yesterday's show on it, but I am curious to know how the team feels, given this is the second time in 6 years their star player has been either ejected or suspended from a playoff game, from a marquee game. I mean, at a certain point, I mean that has to affect you psychologically in some regard. Like, do they feel like they're now playing against the Grizzlies and the refs? Is it really just a forget it and move on situation? Like, how's the team feeling about the refereeing in this game, I guess, in the bigger picture?
Well, in the game specifically, I think it was pretty clear that the ejection was somewhat of a catalyst for them. They brought the rest of the guys definitely stepped up and brought their game to another level and it seemed to rally them together, and I thought, I know Draymond got some flack for his antics before he entered the tunnel, but he was definitely intentional in terms of what he was doing, in terms of going around and high-fiving every guy and hyping them up and just letting them know, like, I'm gone, I can't provide this energy anymore, so you guys need to carry it on your own. And they did that, and so that I thought said a lot about them as a team. It's one of those things where, yes, you want to move on and kind of forget about it, but you can't fully forget about it because at least Draymond has to be very aware of the fact that he's only 2 flagrant foul points away from getting suspended now. I wrote about it yesterday, kind of looking at this kind of difficult tightrope the Warriors have to walk. And to be honest, it's a tightrope they're relatively familiar with, because there's been a lot of times in the regular season where Draymond is on the verge of getting suspended for technical fouls. I think you have 16 technicals and then you get suspended. So he'll often go to like 15 and then just stop. There have been times when I covered the team where he'll get to like 15 in February and then not get another technical the rest of the season. So he's very aware of where he's at.
Right.
And I imagine that that'll be the same in the postseason. The concern is that what happened in game one was relatively fluky, in my opinion. And they were in an uncomfortable position. You know, people have a lot of different opinions on how that transpired and whether or not Draymond deserved to get ejected and all those things. But you can't deny that it was a relatively fluky situation. Draymond does have a habit, regardless of your opinions on whether or not he's a dirty player. He does have a habit of getting his body in weird places.
Mhm. That's fair.
His limbs do go weird ways sometimes. And you can say that's because he's dirty. You can say that's because he's such an aggressive player, whatever you want to say. But the reality of the situation is he finds himself in these weird situations more than other players. And if he finds himself in another weird situation like this, he's suspended. If that happens in the Western Conference Finals or the Finals, that could be absolutely catastrophic because, this team, especially in the playoffs, goes as Draymond goes. I mean, he's the heartbeat. Like, they are not even close to the same team without him. I think they were incredibly lucky and fortunate to get to escape game one without him. I fully did not expect them to win that game after he left. Because keep in mind, they were losing when he left, and they still won the game. I don't think they can be expected to replicate that a lot.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you, man. That when that happened, and granted, I was dealing with the drama of losing my Twitter account. It was just, for me, it was a nightmarish moment, but it's incredible. Even at the end of the game, when Klay missed those free throws, I thought it was over. I did not in a million years think the Warriors are going to win that game. It was the first time in a lot of years where I was screaming outside my house to all the neighbors to let them know what happened. Of course, I'm hoping they knew as well. I got to play this soundbite, Connor, because I only saw this yesterday, and the audio, the full clip, was not made available until yesterday. And this is Draymond Green on Inside the NBA, and it was really the platform I thought he explained himself the best, and especially his interaction with Charles Barkley was interesting. So take a listen, and then we can break this down.
I tell them, let's go, let's get it. And so that's when I went back.
I always ask myself to put the shoe on the other foot when we're debating something. If, I'm trying to think, Brandon Clark hit Steph like that, you would think that was a flagrant 2, though, correct?
Well, that's Brandon Clark and Steph Curry. You and I both know these games aren't officiated.
But I'm just saying, that's just not the case. If somebody smacks Steph in the face and then snatch him out the air like that.
Did I slap him in his face or did I nick his face?
Well, I don't know how hard you hit him. You know how hard you hit him.
And that's where the problem comes when they say excessive. Was it excessive? No. I may have nicked his face trying to get the ball, but you know another thing, Chuck? If we're going to referee tendencies, then you also have to referee tendencies that I get one of those strips a game.
Okay.
So if you're going to referee tendencies, then you got to referee the tendencies both ways. You can't just say this guy has a reputation for hard fouls. You also have to say this guy has a reputation for getting that still just like that all the time.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken. Well, I think the last thing, going back to the
And we could stop there. And what he said that I thought was very interesting, and that whole segment's fascinating, it's on YouTube, is the word excessive. And I think that's where I really feel this was unfair, in that if you're going to give flagrant 2s, it's got to be for excessive plays. And I don't think he hit his face hard. I don't think he was trying to slam him to the ground. And I thought Draymond made a very great point in that. And again, is that where was the excessive force? And I do feel there's a stringent double standard. Connor, what is your opinion on that play before we move on once and for all? Like, do you think that was fair?
I personally thought it was a flagrant 1 from my seat.
Fair.
But
that's fair.
Not a flagrant 2. The key, as you mentioned, with the flagrant 2 is it needs to be excessive and unnecessary. And the crew chief of that game told the pool reporter after the game that they deemed it excessive and unnecessary, which is why they gave him a flagrant 2. And the league apparently agreed, which is why they didn't reduce it or rescind it. But it's an interesting thing because just the word excessive inherently is incredibly subjective.
Agreed.
I mean, that can mean anything to anyone, right? My definition of excessive might be different than your definition of excessive. I talked to some people who were much closer to the action than I was, because I no longer being the beat writer, I don't get the courtside seat like I used to.
Okay.
So I'm like up in the freaking rafters now. But I did talk to some people who were closer than I was, and they said that it looked far different up close in person than it did on TV. They said it did look more excessive in person, and obviously the referees were physically there. So maybe they saw something that we didn't see on TV. That's possible. But I can only judge it based off what I saw, and from what I saw, it didn't look excessive. And the thing with Draymond, I know I listened to your podcast yesterday, and you went on a 25-minute rant about a conspiracy the referees have against the Warriors.
10.
That was
it might have felt like 25, but yeah.
that was long. The thing about Draymond is I don't think it's so much that referees necessarily have it out for Draymond. I just think that referees are human beings, and Draymond does have a history of ending up in these types of situations, probably more than anyone else in the league. And where there's smoke, there's fire a little bit. I mean, were they all just freak accidents? Why do you have so many more freak accidents than everyone else? And I think that referees probably, have that in the back of their mind. Like, there's a history here. And if it is, maybe it was on that like line of that gray area of being a flagrant one or a flagrant two, just that knowledge of his history is probably going to put it over and be a flagrant two. That's just human nature. I'm not even going to fault the refs for that. I think if we were in those shoes, we might be feeling the same way. It's not something, they're probably actively thinking about it. This is all subconscious stuff. It's like anything in life. If you know something about someone, it's going to edify how you treat them and how you go about your interactions with that person.
Yeah, and my only rebut to it wasn't the entire thing yesterday was not conspiracy theory. A lot of it was just me listing actual acts of blatant, lacks of integrity in the game.
But you were doing that to make the point of this could be another example of that.
Yes,
so that sounds like a conspiracy to me.
Well, I mean, you can't prove it either way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is that I don't want to rule out the possibility that there is a foul play going on. Look, even if it's just incompetency, or even if it just comes down to subjectivity and just that the refs, based on inherent bias and human nature, read the room and understand that this is the playoffs. And the first time this happened was egregious enough. There's no other instance in any of the three major sports, and I don't include hockey because I haven't done my research on hockey, but of the three major sports, this is the only time a major star player has ever been kicked out. In 2016, the first time ever a player of that stature has been kicked out of a game. And that obviously changed the whole flow and the momentum of the series. And then here we are again, 6 years later. I was hoping the NBA realized the error in their decision. And here we are again. They're taking out Draymond Green. And I understand, again, like I get it.
Was
My whole thing is
ballsy move by the refs. I mean, it's game one of this, not just a playoff series, but a much hyped playoff series that everyone's been looking forward to for months. And, obviously on national TV and with a very polarizing player, and in the first half of a very close game. I mean, it was a ballsy move. If I was a referee and I thought it was a flagrant two, but I wasn't 100% convinced, I'd probably lean flagrant one just to not try to impact the game too much.
exactly.
And potentially, the Warriors' long-term outlook with these playoffs, because this could be the type of thing that we forget about, and then come like game 4 of the NBA Finals in Boston or whatever, or Milwaukee
Flagrant.
or whatever, oh yeah, Draymond's out the next game now because he's got another flagrant. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that whole huge thing in Memphis in game 1. It could be that type of situation, which is kind of what happened with Draymond when he missed game 5. People forgot about how close he was, and that whole situation was weird because he didn't actually get the flagrant in the game.
Yes.
After the fact, which was even weirder. So It's fascinating. I really do think there's a good chance that this stops being a story and we don't
I
hear
hope so.
about it again, and that he's not suspended. And because he gets technicals, but he doesn't get flagrants a lot.
Right.
This is an issue with the flagrant foul points, not the technicals. So I don't think it's going to be an issue going forward, but
I hope so.
it could be. You never know. Like I said, he ends up in weird positions a lot, and it could happen again.
I hope not, man. I hope not. And I got to show some love to PrizePicks. I don't know if you can bet on PrizePicks about flagrant fouls. You can bet on a lot of things, but regardless, it is daily fantasy made insanely easy and fun. All you got to do if you want to play PrizePicks, and look, it's an award-winning app. They got a website. You pick 2 to 5 players, and there's an over/under on their projections. You can win up to 10 times on any entry. And it's just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Just use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. And for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores just a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use the code NBA for $50 free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores just a single point.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Make sure to go check out Locked On NBA Big Board. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Doolin, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, the big boards. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Connor Letourneau is free and available on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. One of the really fascinating stats that stuck out to me, and I think to a lot of people in game one, was the rebounding advantage that the Warriors had. Kevin Danis said yesterday it actually went up from 51-47 to 52-47. I haven't looked at the latest box score. So the Warriors out-rebounded the Grizzlies by either 4 or 5, and the offensive rebounding number was even. That is honestly what I consider to be the Grizzlies' biggest strength in this series. What is going on there? How did the Warriors out-rebound the Grizzlies? And I imagine that's one thing the Grizzlies are really going to focus on in game 2. What do you think?
I mean, that was definitely the craziest stat because the Warriors have not been a good defensive rebounding team, especially in these playoffs.
Right.
And obviously, Memphis was the best offensive rebounding team in the league. But keep in mind, a big reason why they were the best offensive rebounding team in the league was Steven Adams, who has not been a factor in these playoffs.
Interesting.
He was benched in the first round because he couldn't guard Karl Anthony Towns, and then he entered health and safety protocols. I believe he's still in the health and safety protocols, but there's no indication that once he gets out, he'll necessarily be in the rotation. Seems like the Grizzlies like going small, but even without him, they've in the first round they're a really good offensive rebounding team. Brandon Clark and all those, Bane and all those guys are even Ja Morant. They're all good offensive rebounders. They're very aggressive attacking the boards. They gang rebound. I think that the Warriors were just really sound in boxing out, and that was a huge part of the game plan for them, and they stuck to it. And so, they showed they can do it. I actually think in some ways it helped that Kevon Looney got so much run with Draymond out because Kevon is their best defensive rebounder. And props to Kevon Looney. He's a guy who was basically a total non-factor in the first round, and then, in my opinion, definitely helped them win that game and stay above water, keep their heads above water with Draymond out. And so that was a factor. But one thing that we should keep in mind about game one is that the Warriors had 2 extra days to prepare for that game. Memphis had less than 48 hours.
Correct.
According to their coach, they kept things very simple. They weren't even able to do a full walkthrough before game one.
Wow.
Yeah, they had no time. And so they had a very simple game plan. And I think what you saw was that the Warriors were more prepared from a schematic standpoint in that game. It looked like the Warriors knew exactly what they were going to do in a very detail-oriented manner. They had very specific game plans in terms of how they were going to defend Ja and how they were going to go about very important aspects of that game. I didn't see that level of nuance in the Grizzlies' approach. And I think it was more of a factor of just a lack of preparation time. So I think that we should keep that in mind when evaluating that game. And that's part of why I'm so curious to see what happens tonight in game 2, because everything kind of evens out now, right? Like they had the same time between games. They're both doing the same things in terms of watching the film and making adjustments. So I think that aspect of it is going to even out at this point. And so I expect Memphis to actually win tonight. I think Memphis has a lot of heart. I think Memphis, they have a huge chip on their shoulder. I think that they're very motivated after losing game 1 with Draymond out most of the game. And I think that they're gonna put the clamps down on Golden State tonight. Now, Golden State's probably the better team, so that might not happen. But I feel that way just because I trust and respect their ethos and what they're about. I really like the Grizzlies as a team. I have not been impressed by them in these playoffs, though.
Yeah. I mean, they were insanely impressive all season long. There's a good reason why they were the number 2 seed, finishing 3 games ahead of the Warriors. But I agree with you, man. If I had to make a pick, I would go with the Grizzlies as well. And if you want to bet on the game, betonline.net is your number 1 source for all your betting stats and sports information. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League season. And by the way, I'm on betonline.net right now. And the Warrior, it really does surprise me that the Warriors entered game 1 favorites. And yesterday the line was the Warriors -1.5, and that has now gone up to Warriors -2. And the over-under is 227.5, and the money line is -130 for the Warriors, plus 110 for the Grizzlies. So you're sitting here saying that the Grizzlies will be the smart bet, and I can't disagree with you, because I did not in a million years envision the Warriors coming out of Memphis with a 2-0 lead. I was thinking split, great, right? You take that, and regardless of what happens, I think that is the attitude. But yeah, so Connor Letourneau is recommending the Grizzlies money line. I'm with them. Do you have any thoughts on the over under of 227.5? That went clear over in game 1. Do you think there's going to be a lot of points again?
220. I would do the under. I mean, these are both pretty decent defensive teams. So I was a little surprised by how high scoring that game was.
Same.
The thing is, the Grizzlies are historically so good in transition. But the Warriors did a really nice job on them in that respect in game 1. I mean, the Warriors, it's going to be interesting because the Warriors are just going to kind of try to replicate what they did in game 1. I mean, they did exactly what they wanted to do. I think you're going to see them defending Ja pretty much the same way. I expect them to start Gary Payton II again. There's no reason to change anything.
Right.
It's just going to be really on Taylor Jenkins and Memphis to make adjustments.
You're absolutely right. And BetOnline, again, is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today. That's betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it is where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. Wrapping things up here on Locked On Warriors. So again, we got game 2 coming in. Do you feel like, you just mentioned a moment ago, the Grizzlies not having that time for preparation, given the Timberwolves series, stretched to 6 games? There was a quick turnaround between that and 1, whereas the Warriors had an extra 2, maybe 3 days to prepare. But do you think a whopping whole day is enough for the Grizzlies to suddenly create a game plan? Because it's weird. It's not like the first round where they had like 3 days on average in between games. Now they only have 1 day off in between games. I mean, these are quick turnarounds. Will that benefit the Warriors more? Will is a young and a younger, more athletic Grizzlies team, will it benefit them because of the quick turnaround? What impact does that have? Like, do you think the Grizzlies will have enough time to prepare and game plan for the Warriors?
Well, it's only a quick turnaround before game 2. They have 3 days between games 2 and 3.
Correct.
I'm already thinking about how are we going to, have enough content to last us 3 days between games. You could go either way with that because yes, the Grizzlies have younger bodies. I'm not worried about Steph physically. I think he recovers pretty fast. I'm more worried about Draymond and Klay coming off the injuries. Andre doesn't look like he'll be playing, so I'm not really thinking about him. But the other side of that is I think that in these situations, the Warriors really benefit from their championship pedigree, from a high level experience in the playoffs. And ultimately, that was one of the big reasons why I was giving the nod to the Warriors going into this series. I think that if you look at just kind of the trajectory of the NBA and teams that become title contenders, you kind of need to be knocking on the door for a couple years before you can break through and be a bona fide, legitimate title contender, because you need that experience in high stakes games in the playoffs before you can, win them consistently. And you saw that with the Warriors. They had a couple playoff runs before they broke through in 2015. And I kind of think that, this Grizzlies team is kind of where the Warriors were in like 2014, in the sense that like they're knocking on the door, but they're not there yet just because they don't have the maturation and they don't have the experience yet. And I really do feel like this Grizzlies team is going to be in the title hunt for a half decade to come. I mean, this team is really young, really deep. They're put together really well. They're going to be a major factor for a long time. But based off what I'm seeing so far in the playoffs, I don't believe that they're there yet.
And let's hope they never are there yet. I really think the Warriors are built to withstand that, but we'll see. That's down the road. Great call, by the way, on Gary Payton II starting. You recommended that on Twitter, I believe. Was it Ron Korychek who wrote a whole column on why
Osler, I did.
Osler did. Thank you.
I did maybe recommend for him to write something on that. It's always fun to because that wasn't I didn't have any intel telling me that they were going to do that. That was just me speculating. I mean,
right.
I know how they think. I know what they care about, and so I was kind of getting in their minds a little bit, and so I was not surprised at all to see them start GP2. GP2 was, I thought, overall pretty good in game 1. I mean, he definitely got in foul trouble early, which was the concern because it's easy to be handsy with Ja, and he has a tendency to be a little handsy. And in the playoffs, they call those much closer. So I was not surprised that happened.
Yeah, this year.
He's still the Warriors' best option on Ja, though. And
by far.
And one of the big reasons why I am confident the Warriors are going to win the series, and why I was confident entering the series that they would win, is that the Warriors are like the only team in the NBA that has 2 great options on Ja. They have Gary Payton II, who's arguably the best option in the NBA statistically, if you look at the numbers. And then they have Andrew Wiggins, who's more than held his own. So, and I thought Andrew Wiggins was pretty good on Ja.
Agreed.
When he was up with him against him in game 1. So, if you can just nullify him as much as possible, you're gonna win. I mean, this team is built around Ja for a reason, and specifically, they're built around Ja's floater game. Like Ja, I think he led the NBA in points in the paint this year for like a 6'2" guard. It's insane.
He did, yeah. He's a freak. I mean, for all the things, as surprised as Dub Nation and people are about Gary Payton II and his athleticism at 6'3", sometimes playing like a power forward role, guarding bigger men. I mean, he was pestering Jokic in that first round. Ja Morant's a great example that he's not alone in terms of little guys playing big. Ja Morant, you're absolutely right. I believe led the NBA in paint scoring this year, which is absurd. One strategy I saw that the Warriors implement, which defensively, which I thought was beautiful, and this maybe plays into what you're saying about them having extra time to prepare, is that what I saw is that they were just going to let Josh shoot open shots like from deep. Like they were conceding that. Jaren Jackson Jr. a similar story. They were conceding him shooting outside shots, and Ja, after making his first two, actually struggled. He finished after those first two threes, he went 2 for 9 from three. Jaren Jackson was another story. He went 6 for 9 from three. But with that said, you also had their really big threats as shooters, and Desmond Bane and Dylan Brooks were relatively nullified. I mean, both those players scored in single digits. That shocked me. Did you see something similar in terms of the defensive strategy where basically they decided we're not going to let Bane and Brooks beat us from outside, and Ja and Jaren can shoot all they want, and we're going to live with that? Or am I totally misreading things here?
No, that's
What were your
definitely
thoughts?
what the plan was. That's definitely what the plan was. And I mean, the Warrior, that's kind of, it's not like the Warriors were unique in having that approach. A lot of teams kind of approached the Grizzlies with that mindset, but the Warriors executed it as well as anyone. If you look at the numbers, Desmond Bane didn't get very many threes up. Ja got a lot of threes up. Ja hit some of them, and Jaren Jackson hit more than his share of them. But I think the Warriors are fine with that. It'll average out at some point if they can continue to do that. If you're going to have them limit Bane from beyond the arc and let Ja let the ball fly from beyond the arc, then you're usually in good shape against the Grizzlies. So that's definitely a blueprint they're going to continue to follow. I expect Ja to be much more aggressive tonight. There were a lot of times in game one where he kind of settled for the three and kind of took what the defense gave him when he definitely could have forced it and gotten into the paint. And I think tonight you're going to see him being far more aggressive, and it'll be interesting to see how the Warriors handle that.
Yeah, and you mentioned Gary Payton II and Wiggins as being fantastic defenders on Ja. Don't forget Draymond too. I mean, hopefully he'll play the full game. And that's the beauty of Draymond Green is he can defend 1 through 5. That's why he's in the discussion among the greatest defenders ever. I still don't know if he's leaped over Dennis Rodman yet, but those, I mean, he's phenomenal as a defensive player without a doubt.
I think he's much more versatile of a defender than Dennis Rodman was.
You can make that argument. Yeah, it's a great debate.
Smarter defensive player than Dennis Rodman was.
Interesting. Yeah, like I said, that's interesting. I haven't thought of it from the acumen
Draymond
level.
Green is just like, it was actually kind of interesting because my seat in game one, we were pretty high up, but you had I actually liked it because you had a really good kind of bird's eye view of like formations and where guys were on the floor. And Draymond is just like really fun to watch from that vantage point because especially against the Grizzlies, he's playing that role of kind of the rover, the roaming defender, and he's going where he's needed. Whereas against the Nuggets, he was just like so busy with Jokic that he was dialed in there. But when he's in that roving role, it's really fun because you see how smart he is defensively. Like he sees the floor so well. He knows exactly where he needs to be. He never overhelps. He never overcompensates in any way. He's really good at lurking next to a play, watching it develop, and then pouncing right at the exact right moment. And that level of timing and instinct is just next level. Like no one does that. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. Do you think Kuminga plays a bigger role? Do you think it's weird? It's weird seeing Bielitsa just effectively pushed out of the playoff rotation. I don't understand what he did wrong. I know he's a bit of a defensive liability. I thought he was playing great in games 1 through 3 against the Nuggets. And then game 4, you saw 4 minutes and change. And game 5 and game 1 of this series, poof. Like he just is now, below Juan Toscano Anderson and Damian Lee. He's literally the last guy on the bench now.
In game 1, which was Damian Lee got meaningful minutes in game 1, which was weird.
Yes. Bielitsa's at the bottom of the bench, man. I don't know what happened there.
I can understand playing Kuminga over him and obviously Gary Payton II, but yeah, Damian Lee. And I mean, I guess they need a wing in that moment, but I would even rather have Juan Toscano Anderson or Moses Moody out there than Damian Lee.
And Moody's amazing. I agreed. It is weird. I mean, he did good. They won. It's hard to complain, but it's a trip. It just shows who Kerr trusts, and for some reason,
Kerr loves him some Damian Lee, man. Kerr loves Damian Lee, and I know every time I hear fans being like, I don't want Damian Lee on the roster. I'm like, well, as long as Steve Kerr's their head coach and Steph Curry's on the roster, I'm not sure Damian Lee's going anywhere.
And
They'll just keep signing. They'll keep signing him to that minimum contract. He's not going to get any big offers anywhere else.
I guess I'm okay with it if he's your 14th, 15th guy, but you're right. He sometimes gets minutes that's taken away from players I think should be playing and growing and contributing. But that's just me, man. What is the vibe like as a spectator there? I know you're technically in the media section, but is it compared to Chase? Is it louder? Describe your feeling of the ambiance.
It is. Memphis has always had a good home environment. The cool thing about it as a media member, when I was a beat writer, shout out to CJ Holmes. He now gets this seat, but you're literally at midcourt on the court. And, like on nationally televised games, I would get texts from fans, friends and family being like, I see you, because you're right behind Steve Kerr. And CJ Holmes, I know that was happening to him in game 1 a lot. So that it's a really fun environment. I would say it's louder. I don't think it was as loud in game 1 as I expected it to be. But it was pretty loud. It's funny. I was talking to a guy who covers the Grizzlies yesterday, and he was telling me that Memphis Tigers, University of Memphis basketball is way bigger than the Grizzlies. And I just find that so weird. I'm like, you guys have a really relevant NBA team. You have like this potentially generational talent in Ja Morant. And he's like, yeah, like because he's works for the Commercial Appeal, the paper here. He's like, our numbers for the Memphis Tigers are way better than the Memphis Grizzlies. And, I always think that's a good barometer to judge like how popular a sports team is like the readership. Like I can tell you that our A's numbers are non-existent. Our Giants numbers are very good. Our 49ers numbers are very good. And our Warriors numbers are the best when they're good, but they fluctuate the most because they don't have as much history in terms of being relevant in the, locally. So, but that's what he said. And that kind of boggled my mind. I was like, honestly, if I was a player for the Grizzlies and I knew that the Memphis Tigers, who are like in the American Conference or whatever.
Yeah, I mean Penny Hardaway is
not even in like a big conference. Like I'd be insulted.
It's weird, man. It's weird. Yeah. And I remember I had Drew Hill on this show last year. He's a reporter for the Daily Memphian, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on the name of the publication. And he was telling me the same thing. He was echoing similar sentiments, and he was like, because Wiseman was on that team. I actually covered him extensively, and he was giving me some really fascinating inside information about Wiseman, how he used to be very aloof. A lot of local media questioned his work ethic. I mean, I was hearing stuff from him going like, wow,
Wiseman was not in a good headspace the whole time he was at Memphis.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
I mean, he definitely was sad. And he told me that when he was at Memphis, he literally never left his dorm. Like he would go to his dorm and go to practice and go to his dorm and go to practice. And
why?
He was not in a good headspace. He was sad. He was not good.
Poor guy.
Mentally, because of all the scrutiny he was under and pressure. Because that whole time he was there was all the speculation about the Penny Hardaway thing and the suspension. And he didn't handle it well. He was 19 or 18 years old at the time. And that's something I've thought about this series. It's like, man, this has to be kind of hard on him, He's just sitting on the bench in his quasi hometown. He went to high school in Memphis, got his high school jersey retired down the street at Memphis East. I actually was there at the ceremony a few months ago.
When
I was filming on the beat. And here he is, like knowing he's not going to play. It's got to be hard for him.
I'm hearing your questions a lot on the press conferences. Keep up the great work there. Just keep up the great work, period. And anyone can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. He is covering the Golden State Warriors for the San Francisco Chronicle. You're producing some fantastic content. Congratulations. You have convinced me to subscribe to the San Francisco Chronicle. I'm actually paying for publication money.
You hit me up the other day and you're like, I can't get behind the bill. I'm like, yeah, we'll freaking pay for it, bro. I'll go on your podcast every freaking week. Pay for my content. It's the least you can do. Jeez.
You win. I did. I am. So I am officially a San Francisco Chronicle subscriber now. And have fun, man. Are you guys coming back tonight after the game? Is it tomorrow? What's your schedule looking like?
Coming back 6 a.m. flight tomorrow. Yeah, Memphis is not an easy city to get in and out of, unfortunately. So I have 2 freaking layovers. It's gonna be brutal.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I do think this is at least gonna go 5 games, so we'll probably be out here next week too. So
Yeah, I'm still sticking with my prediction of 6, but winning game 1 for the Warriors was huge. And I mean, look, you're right. Anything is possible. The Warriors could win this game tonight. They could sweep this series, and it should not surprise people. But the Grizzlies
if they win tonight, yeah, I mean, they could sweep them. I talked to some national people who have a better pulse in the league at large than I do, who I trust, and they said that this was entering the series. They said that there's a much better chance of this going 5 games than 7 games.
That's interesting. Do you mind sharing with the audience who are the national media members you do trust? Like, give us some recommendations because I'm always open to that.
One of my favorites is Ben Golliver at the Washington Post. I think he's really freaking good.
Agreed.
Everything he writes is high quality. I'm like a writer guy, so like I care about the actual writing and like the quality of the prose and things like that.
As anyone should. Yes.
I'm not all about just like news breaking and the information. I'm really about like my thing is like if I'm going to take time to read you, I should enjoy it. I should enjoy the process of reading.
Agreed.
And
that's journalism.
I can't say that about every sports writer that I actively enjoy reading them. So
I'm with you.
I really enjoy him. I really enjoy Howard Beck. I really Marcus Thompson locally. I know he's our competition, but I really appreciate what he does. There's a lot of guys, but those are the first names that come to mind. Scott Cacciola at the New York Times, who's more of a featurey guy.
Yes.
I love him. So there's some good content. You just, you gotta like, I'm the type of guy, like I have like favorited the author pages of like 6 writers and I just go and read everything they write. Absolutely. No matter what they're writing about.
I'm totally with you, man. That's I love that approach. That's good stuff. Well, safe travels. Hope the game tonight is super fun. Let's go Warriors. But don't be surprised, Dub Nation. Don't be surprised if the Grizzlies make this tough and pull out the win because they are a great team. They are. I mean, I before the playoffs started, I consider them to be the biggest threat to the Warriors. I still do. I mean, I really feel like if the Warriors win this series, they're going to mop the floor for the rest of this. The Celtics. It was just one game, but seeing them lose the way they did to the Bucks really changed my perspective on that team. I really believe wholeheartedly, man, if the Warriors come out of this and they're healthy for the rest of the way, they got this. The trophy's theirs. And this Grizzlies team's tough. We'll see what happens, but hope you have fun, man. Enjoy the food. Are you grubbing on barbecue ribs? And
yeah, I've had some really good ribs. Went to Blue City Cafe. A couple times I had which is like the famous places, where Steph and Draymond had their famous meeting back in 2015.
Where I got food poisoning, yes.
Yes, which like first negative words I've ever heard about Blue City Cafe. Like,
sorry, dude. I know.
You're like ruining it for me.
Well, no, I know. I'm sorry. Well, hopefully this makes you feel better. I brought this up with Drew Hill. Again, he's a reporter there. And his response was, oh, that's not the place you go to get like high quality food. That's the place you go if it's midnight, 1 a.m., you're getting drinks, and then the food is amazing. And I was like,
well, I got it sober the other night, and I enjoyed it. It's also very affordable, and it's a lot of food.
Yes.
But
that's the crazy part. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
But we went to, Ray Ritter. You got to travel in the playoffs sometime, man, because Ray Ritter takes all the media members out every road trip for like a nice dinner out. And, yeah, that was.
I might consider that, man. I've never traveled. No, I haven't done that part of it before. That's your realm, dude. I would love to try that sometime. But yeah, and Drew Hill told me, look, I went and ate at that place at like 3 p.m. And then it tasted fine. That was the weird part. Usually, if I've ever gotten sick from food, something tastes off. Like it was fine. And yeah, dude, by midnight, I left town that day, and by midnight, I was in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And pulled over, found a hotel because I had my dog with me, and then raced to the ER. Wow. I was just puking nonstop. But damn. I also, whatever, man. Hopefully it was just.
I'm gonna black out that that conversation because I might be eating there tonight. So.
Or just have a drink, just have a cocktail with it at least. So just make so it always makes me feel good about eating. Anyways, have fun out there, man. You'll be back. I hope you come back on the show soon. Yeah, well, we'll see how this goes, Dub Nation. So, and again, you can follow Connor Letourneau one more time on Twitter at CON_CHRON, Con_Cron. You can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow, and this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Tomorrow, Brian Witt's going to join me. Again, he formerly ran the Twitter account of the Golden State Warriors. He was a former columnist for NBC Sports Bay Area. He has great Warriors insights. So he'll be with me tomorrow, and we'll figure out how the rest of the week goes. And now make your second listen Locked On NBA. From the first jump ball of the play-in tournament to the last possession of the finals, Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams, including your Golden State Warriors. Connor, always a pleasure, my man. And we'll be hanging out in San Ramon soon. You're going to be an official resident here in short time, and we'll be kicking it, man. They got a Phil's coffee here. That always makes me – I haven't tried it yet.
I go pretty often.
All right, brother. We'll talk soon, man. Thank you. Take care.